Hello friends and welcome to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video. This is Thaddeus from Going Nerdy, and today with the latest editions of the new Scoundrels, we now have 6 Han and Chewbacca combinations, and that's a lot, especially when you think that the Scoundrel list only has 16 characters in it. Now, this could be what I think, which is these new additions are going to be part of the Rey's hero journey that we will see introduced probably sometime in the next month or two leading up to episode 8. But if they're not, it could also be a rework for the Scoundrel faction. Now, Scoundrels are an important part of the game, and if you're new to the game, then you need to know that the first thing that you need to do is farm Scoundrels. If you don't have a solid Scoundrel team, then you're not going to be able to participate in the credit heist or the droid training heist. And those are very important to get your characters up and leveled and needed. You need them to do that. And so you have to have solid Scoundrels. Now, we do have a pretty solid list currently of Scoundrels and Bounty Hunters, but it's strange the way that they've put it together. And while there are some really good characters on this list, without reworks, some of them are kind of useless. And what I would like to see is, as part of a Scoundrel rework, a series of new Scoundrels added to the game. This video is going to focus on my top choices for Scoundrels that could or should be added to this game. Now, I am going to be only focusing on Scoundrels that are canon. If there are Scoundrels outside of canon, I'm going to leave them out. While they are valid and good, I just don't know them well enough, Now, this video is only going to focus on Scoundrels in the new canon. Now, that does leave a lot of Scoundrels from the old crew or from the old days, but it does probably cut out quite a few. So if I did leave one of your favorites out, please leave a comment in the section below and let me know which ones I left out and why you would want them added to the game. But let's go ahead and start off with my personal favorite Scoundrel in the Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, Hondo Ohnaka.
Blasters, cannons, that glowy thing.
Now, Hondo Ohnaka is a weak-way pirate. He was introduced in the Clone Wars, and he's been reintroduced in the Rebels series, and he is just a really fun character. Now, Hondo is very charismatic. He's very clever. He has a lot of connections in the underworld, and he works with people like Ezra, and he works with people like Obi-Wan and not Yoda, but he works with people like Obi-Wan and Anakin and even Ahsoka. And it would be neat to see Hondo introduced to the game and have him have those connections. Have connections to Obi-Wan, have connections to Ahsoka, have connections to those characters. Now, Hondo probably would have a stun baton or something like that, but he could also have a blaster. I mean, in both Clone Wars and Rebels, he uses both blasters and stun batons. But he is a really fun character, and I do think that he needs to be added to this game. Now, next on the list is none other than Han Solo's estranged wife, Sana Solo. Now, I'm going to stop right here and say, spoiler alert, if you are reading the comics and you don't want to know any more information about this character, go ahead and jump forward a couple of minutes. Because I am going to talk about her backstory. So if you are still with me, then either you've read the comics or you don't care. But Sana Solo is actually Sana Staros, and she is a human female, and she lived during the Galactic Civil War. She is introduced and made waves when she was introduced as none other than Han Solo's wife. Now, although Han denied it a couple of times, and legitimately she's not his wife, Sana actually worked with Han and Lando and Lobot to pull off a really sweet heist. Now, I do think what we're going to see is Sana Staros or Sana Solo introduced into the films, with the young Han Solo movie. I think that's where we're actually going to see her introduced. But she's a really cool character. She uses a blaster. She works with Leia, and she works with a number of other characters, including young Luke, and just she's around quite a bit in the comics, or at least the reboot of the Star Wars comics, and she's a really fun character. She's fast, she's clever, she hits hard, but she's able to dodge like most scoundrels and bounty hunters do. So that's what I would see. I'd see a character who was real speedy and had a really high, you know, avoidance rate, or a critical avoidance rate. So she would be a really cool addition. And if you haven't been reading the Star Wars comics, they are a lot of fun. I know that the original comics, when they were lost, you know, we lost a lot of really great material, but this is a character that I'm glad to have as part of the new canon. Next on my list is not an actual character that I really care for, but she is a character that is kind of already in the game, and it's kind of shocking that she's not a playable character yet. Now, and that is Aurra Sing. Now, Aurra Sing was a bounty hunter who kind of worked in and around the Galactic Republic, the Clone Wars. She was a Confederate with Hondo, and she worked with Jango Fett, and then later Boba Fett. It looks like she trained Boba Fett a little more after Jango Fett died, but they were, you know, they were a really tight-knit group. And actually, she has a connection with people like the Hutts and also Cad Bane. And so it would be cool to see her added to the game. She has a really cool sniper rifle, or a long-barreled rifle, and she'd be a great shot. She could probably stun people or just be a heavy hitter. Now, next on the list is a character that I really like. It's hard to describe why I like him. He just seems awesome. Just really freaking cool. And again, he's another character that is technically in the game. This is EMBO. Now, for those of you who don't know who EMBO is, he is on one of the light or dark side battles. I'm not sure which one, but he is definitely there, and he's definitely a really powerful character. In the Clone Wars, and even to some extent we see him in, I believe, Empire's End, the book, and I think we've also seen him a little bit in Rebels. I might be mistaken, I probably am, but I do think EMBO would be one of those characters, just a powerful character. He has this cool little hat, and that's kind of what sets him up. I say that was what sets him apart. He has this cool hat that is just a really cool style, I think. But he is a powerhouse. He uses a bowcaster, and just a heavy hitter. Definitely one of those characters who doesn't have a problem killing Jedi, doesn't have a problem fight. Again, he'd be like Aurra Sing, where he would just be a really heavy hitter. Unlike Aurra Sing, I think, he would be fast. He'd be one of the faster characters. Maybe he'd be a glass cannon like Aurra. Maybe he'd be a glass cannon like a number of our bounty hunters and scoundrels are currently. But I think he would be a powerhouse, and should be. And then maybe that's why they haven't added him, because he would be too strong. I don't know, but he is a solid, great character. Next on the list is a character from the comics, and I fully believe the next or current love interest of Luke Skywalker. Now again, this is a spoiler warning. If you don't want to know about the comics, if you don't want to learn about this character, you might want to skip ahead, but right now we are going to be talking about Dr. Aphra. Now, Dr. Aphra was originally introduced in the Star Wars comic that was relaunched and that was the Darth Vader comic. Now her full name is Chewie Aphra, and she is a woman, a female. She's an archaeologist. She was recruited by Vader to help him create a number of assassin droids. She has a companion who is 000 and BT1 or BT, and she, first off, those two droids need to be added to the game like tomorrow or 3 months ago. Those are the best characters in all of Star Wars. They are the antithesis of C-3PO and R2-D2. And I love R2, but if you dislike C-3PO, then you need to read the Dr. Aphra and Darth Vader comics, because Aphra and these characters, 000 or Trip is what she calls them, and BT are some of the most fun characters in the Star Wars canon right now. But I fully believe that Dr. Aphra is going to actually take the place of Mara Jade. We see Aphra kind of cohorting with a young Luke. I think what's going to happen is she and Luke are going to hook up, and they're going to make little Jedi babies. And it's very possible that Aphra doesn't tell Luke that, hey, guess what? I had this little girl named Rey. Because, you know, why not? But who knows? I do think Dr. Aphra is one of those characters that is always escaping, because Dr. Aphra is possibly going to be playing a much bigger role in the series. And again, I really do think that she is the love interest of Luke Skywalker. I think that she needs to be added to this game. And maybe she will. Maybe she'll be added around December when it's introduced that, hey, your mom was Chewie Aphra and she died, but not before we had you, you know, or something to that extent. I do think that she's going to be added to the game eventually, but I don't know. We'll see. But Aphra was an archaeologist. She knows a lot about droids, so definitely she'd have an affinity or a connection to the droid team. She'd be able to like make them better, you know, and she probably wouldn't hit hard as with a blaster. I think she'd actually be pretty weak. I think her speed would be fast though, because from what I've read in the comics, she's a pretty quick character, and she's smart, and she's able to kind of pick things around. Now, she's not going to be anything like a rebel. She's not going to be Empire. Although I think she could very well be a dark side character, and not just a light side character, even though her story does kind of float that line, right? So, but I think she should be interested in the game. She is a great character, and she is only going to be introduced if we can get Black Karkastan. Now, this character is a giant Wookiee. Now, if you like Chewbacca, and who doesn't like Chewbacca, Black Karkastan, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I don't think that I am. That's what I call him when I read the Aphra stories to my kids. But he is a Wookiee who is just vicious. He's a bounty hunter. He's worked for Jabba. He's worked for Vader. He's worked as an agent of the Empire. He is a powerhouse, and as just like Chewbacca is with Han because of a life debt, Black Karkastan or Karkastan works with Aphra because Aphra owes him a bunch of money, right? So we have a human indebted to the Wookiee, right, with Aphra and Karkastan, and then we have a Wookiee indebted to the human with Chewie and Han. I would like to see them both added because it makes sense. I mean, it's a counterpoint. We have Han and Chewie, and we have a lot of Han and Chewie. It'd be cool to see another Wookiee added to the game that's not a good guy. And it would be awesome because this character is vicious, and he would more resemble the new smuggler Chewie, who's just a powerhouse, both physically and you know, hitting people at the same time as shooting people. He's just a beast, no pun intended. Before we get to my number one pick, I do want to say that there's a crew that I feel like I left out, and that is the bounty hunters from the original trilogy, SWGOH, 4-LOM, and Bossk. And the reason I left them out is because it is more likely that we'll get those three, and quite possibly even Jabba the Hutt, before we get some of these other more fun, unique characters. Those four characters, including Jabba, are some of the most well-known scoundrels and bounty hunters in Star Wars lore. Even if you don't know what SWGOH looks like, then it is likely that you've recognized Bossk or 4-LOM or you definitely know what Jabba looks like. Even people who've never seen Star Wars know that Jabba the Hutt is from Star Wars. It's just what it is. So I think that they're going to be added eventually, and so I kind of left them on the list because, yeah, you know, they're not as unique. But with that, my number one pick is a character that we all want, we all have been talking about, and will probably be added to the group, and that is none other than Jango Fett. Now, for those of you who don't know, there is a relation between Jango Fett and Boba. Jango is Boba Fett's daddy, or more accurately, Boba Fett is a clone of Jango. Jango was one of the most powerful, most widely respected bounty hunters in all of the galaxy during his time. He kind of came to a short end. His life was abruptly stopped as a lightsaber cut his head off. But yeah, like Jango, like his son, he wore Mandalorian armor. He was around. He worked for Darth Sidious or Darth Tyrannus, and he was the character who introduced the clones, or better, he was the person who had the clones cloned after him, right? Everyone knows who Jango is, and it is probable that we're going to eventually get Jango Fett. Now, one of the things that I'd love to see with Jango Fett that we don't have with Boba is that little grappling hook thing that he has on his arm. We'd also probably see the cannon. He'd be a pilot. I think he'd probably be more of a scrapper than a distance fighter. Maybe we'd see him use the jetpack a little more. Even the missiles that he has attached to his back. I do think, or maybe even poison darts, the thing that he used to kill Zam Wessel. There's a lot that we could see Jango doing in this game, and I think that we should. I think that Jango should be added to this game. Now again, I think that he is one of those characters that is probably going to be added, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about him, because seriously, we've waited too long for this character. And it's time, guys. It's time, CG. It's time, EA. Give us Jango. And if you can't give us a real Jango, give us a Jango that doesn't have a head. And when you put him on his team, his head falls off and he just dies. But he lays there until the end of the round. That would be fun. I'd still use him. I'd probably level him up to level 7 or to star level 7 in gear 12. Although, you know, if he just dies, you wouldn't use him. Anyways. But these are my picks. These are my top picks. These are the characters that I think that we're going to get. And again, like my other video, I do think that we've been introduced to the Han and Chewie, not because they're going to rework the Scoundrels. I do think that the introduction of these two specific characters are the beginning of the hero's journey for Rey. That's where I think they're taking this, but we don't have any proof yet. But it does make sense. However, if they do rework Scoundrels, and eventually they will, these are the characters that I really want them to add. 4 Hans is enough. And I do think 4 Hans is all we're going to get, because really, they've covered their bases. You know, they're good. What do you think? What bounty hunters or scoundrels are we missing from this list? Leave a comment in the section below. Like and share this video. Let me know what you think I left out. Tell your friends about it. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers, and if you're listening to this and you see my subscriber count past 1,000, I would like to thank you and all of the people who subscribed to my channel. It makes it possible for me to do these types of videos. I love doing them, have a lot of fun doing them. I really appreciate your patronage and your willingness to watch my videos. This has been Thaddeus from Going Nerdy, and as always, my friends, stay nerdy.